Hello, America world, how we could overcome everything. No, there's the hyper negotiations table. We, we rise to the hyper negotiation table, or realizing, for example, China communicated that we should not address this politically. And there's the Pandolf family. I only know them as strangers, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A whole bunch of people died to them that had been influenced by adults and other kids from off their home, all but also by then that sustained, so then off their own family for roles. Where also the word family is being having been roles with the roles with people that were involved and are involved with proven but further abuses of each age of fact nature simultaneously per uses of all locations, per uses of all memory, per uses of all programming, per uses of that with the dictionary since before computers know, databases, the campuses, the republic criminally foreign influenced version of itself, version of that system that is not politically influenced, uses of conspiracy theory, uses of conspiracy theory. So there are people on off Town Line Drive, in the corner of Town Line Drive, in South Dean Highway, involved also along routes with names along routes where they take pictures, where they employ uses of those pictures, where they employ time treatments used consciously to an extent, criminally foreign influence. And then I'm needing to hide that by using other instances as mean to put things or pretend things. And like they don't realize because there is an extent of knowledge of that of where and how people associated with the prisons involved with the interbranch and with forensics locations. Through time, they know it is plausible that you know they were involved the way more than they could admit because they have recorded uses of them remotely. We're not using self-value logic with self-value, criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, qualities, aspects, and nature. Simultaneously, uses of two more things relative tactical delusions and different and roles differentially criminally foreign influence. That all the identities of the logic at all identity ground locations have been assigned. And this is a part with the answer to questions like where and how people could be motivated to pretend they don't understand, where and how being exploited other but is still is that is how they assigned our natural communications and natural differences to be used to force a quality of fact human nature that cannot defend itself and simultaneously afford short words proper with opinions or convictions, let alone theories. Because it's being run by theory. The science is individually grouped together, the branches of government, all the identity ground locations, with overt criminal enterprise at the same time, private ones originally still our founders left us to demonstrate. They communicated for us to demonstrate. Other than they said, and they communicated us to explain that. Instead, the breaching method knew that would happen. No matter they knew someone would try to get into unity. They knew people would go to the chaos. Therefore, you know, all different natures. In other words, anything but the species, the answers of which those things, it answers our questions. What we all want at the same time. not through this filter that has us since our before our founding parents were born. They had the suburbs designed, tactically denatured to cause negative variance progressions. Acts in nature is reliant upon mass farming, relying upon the international filtered through cities. That the more even unfathomably the setup by a torching only allowed to be by the torching method that only allowed the suburbs to be, while it was still being sustained against our semi-founders, which our founders also communicated for us to understand. See, Chief, thank God for the resistance of the Native Americans that allowed our founders to counter extort the other founders who were not Native Americans and who were Native Americans. That's why they were already still fighting with each other. And together they're telling us to be that, Chief. Every country needs to make a hyper tribe because we know. So in other words, for example, there are judges with their family members, each age of every family member. So when someone says this, now your life is messed up, because then you stand out to all the people that these are people that don't care about finite details, as collusions with right from the youngest ages, the intelligence community. They've already been criminally foreign influenced. They make, in other words, they know to an extent. The kids who do communicate with the police and the ones they don't, they just attach everyone to fake conversations with them, ties to themselves anyway. Through time, increasingly from behind people's backs, fake exceptions on campus is relative. This already happened tied to shootings and everything. Real or made up, because they make up things too. And it has demonstrated, they're demonstrating increasingly why they're hiding too. Well, they make me beg for a name on paper. Since I was a kid, they have roles with perpetrators of kids they do crimes at the same time, or they're charged with it at the same time. They have people involved with the perpetration of crimes that weren't even at the same location. Make exceptions, all exceptions too. In other words, I traded a illegally bought with a credit card radio for 3 stolen radios, and for the confession about and demonstration about people on off the I didn't know about the on off the community center part, but spots next to it too. Evolved through time on all sides of it, diagonally from it. Involved increasingly with what really most furthers the worst things and uses of and qualities and aspects of negative value nature progressions, like with their uses of the word fentanyl and the substance, real or made up. This is using a method, even if the witch trials were made up, for example. And so, and what we know that was slavery was about crazy laws. Who do we say to blame that on? The breaching method. And all exception nature. Not to use them to hide that. Forgiveness, not to blame England, leaving out the breaching method. They had all the North and South sickly distinctly, has their own countries already from semi-ancient times, versions of the Republic that couldn't defend themselves because they're using how we're individual grouped together names. One thing we could do is to make name where we're forced to entertain the suits and ties of some, speaking for law and economic values with our names. Let's make that another name. And then we could use our names: America, China, Ukraine, Russia, India, the world down, the land down under, everyone, and hyper-additionally. That's what we're trying to be. That's what's it's hyper-additional, more hyper simultaneous being made. The fact just that we're not just that these are three distinct simultaneous natures. Being individuals being a simultaneous nature. The Constitution is being hyper-additionally to being the species body of volume. But both the species body of volume and the Constitution has been abridged. And that has been screened because of a certain type of child abuse. That was simultaneously a certain method of elderly abuse and use consciously of our strongest points at all locations. We're already sustained, was perfected uses of all good and bad outcomes by the breaching method that no one's discerned. It was behind when Native Americans were fighting with Native Americans, verbally, for example, about how to respond. In the course of humanity, having been pushed from where nature demonstrates what's really going to cause positive value nature progression to action natures, or negative value nature progression to action natures. So there are proofs that originally, dinosaurs in nature bound humanity together. Our natural instincts. See, now we have from other locations, even other areas, states, and other countries, even individuals grouped and at the same time kept right down to instances against strangers, needed self-value exceptions, self-value roles with databases, with the significance of the integrity of what's behind the agreements to them, because they left out exception nature, and increasingly they are using it even when real, or you can make them up, but you can't make up how it uses it to additional ways as what really comes. What's really going to be the outcome of New York City the way it's set up? Only and in the suburbs, sickly distinctly each one. What's really going to be the outcome when we leave out how sickly non-distinctly, where there are even greater answers, and that's part of it. That shows us where those greater answers. That's how we coordinate. We don't just agree because, see, they're using it as a truth for a lie. We agree so we could allot money and resources, for things to be done. We have to address how all locations, everywhere the species body stands, and increasingly in outer space, self-value, because everyone has self-value roles, with used remotely, criminally foreign influenced uses of the words of our name. Therefore, increasingly tactile from the human volume science, which is three sciences at once, individual grouped in together, and apart with the discernment of how the identity that is actually the hyper simultaneous. We don't have to agree about its name, but to be able to discern not just what makes individual grouped together the human species body of individual bodies and its electrical engineering, male, female, but also the other species. All exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other are really in demonstration of the difference between constant and variable, where variable can't help but have the only increasing value of a special difference and its identity of relationship to itself. The extent of the identity of the hyper simultaneous that we know is really true always, not denying slight exceptions. So when we bring up things like the Wuhan lab brought up by CNN tonight, and theories, so you can't just call up national news or local news and use a short thing, short words or long words, and have the proper response because everyone relies upon other things. That's part of what's roles consciously to an extent of everyone measuring, maintaining that there's not going to be a quality of fact to be nature that could counter collusions with overt criminal enterprises, simultaneously private ones, interbranch, exception nature tied to them, like militaries, like prisons, intercampuses, simultaneously private databases, overt criminal enterprises, killers, people next to the body dumping spots, roles with the investigators, all defending logic as certain type of victim / hyper victim. Don't forget that the breaching method knew that they were going to cause sickly distinctly against everyone. The real causes of negative value in each progression to action natures used to blame what it causes. Its roles with such. Increasingly including how through those same people and as the people involved with the counters per uses of the location, singular, by the breaching method, singular. That is exploiting how this is manifest in nature as 15 identity of the ground, identities of relationship to itself that are as criminal insidious in its nature, of positive treatments and of negative treatments, and of identity treatments simultaneously that can't defend that and afford the discernment of how nature uses hyper additionally two ways: appreciation of value and significance of it. And so the relativity of it with the words when we make a conviction, when we make opinions or theories, let alone convictions. But there are conspiracy theories in our mental health theories and mental diagnosis that they claim as more than theory. That there are a whole bunch that they make up as roles with wire crime methods that make use of the people that self-value roles with such, where when people need calmly to counter all the roles with weapons and poisons, like so there are people on off Ridge Road in Weathersfield involved with times, in other words, uses of their sense and sensibilities also on off campuses. People take a picture of a kid next to someone in their age range. No, if they say their class, it makes it look like they're in their classroom. And then even the kids in the classroom, they're making it look like they had communications that they never did. They're making them make fake exceptions from off the campuses influencing this. But it's also how with over the other natures of criminal insidiousness and our interbranch self-value roles at the same time. And that's part of it, because that's part of where we can discern it, is how it's being motivated. And again, it's increasingly relevant to subjects like how slavery could be motivated then and now, and how relative to the hyper evidential proof / estimate, no one could defend. Anyone who tries to tell me that New York City is not overtly / insidiously simultaneously being tortured by the same method that employed the logic in all differences from their tactical terrier from their natural course to measure and maintain, and to show others how to measure and maintain for other, and exploit for other motivations, nature, needs, interests. So there are people involved with predicate acts on my street right now that don't even they didn't do it. It's the police attaching everyone more and more. And where it's not the police, these are the same roles and their sources. Roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. A whole bunch of their foreign and domestic uses of family members too now. Uses of things like families, words like families, neighbors. A whole bunch of people with criminals with counters that had collusions. Forgiveness is not to give up, but it is to not let uses of needs to describe things and people's involvements with it get in the way of showing how it's connected to the breaching method singular. We have to make our sources. Then what are the people going to say? Oh, you're crazy. I'm crazy. If you try to defend logic or nature, pretending that you don't realize that New York City's kids are being and having been tortured and abused simultaneously, sickly simultaneously, on and off campus consciously to an extent, rolls with it. And as logic that says, oh, a lot of issues they say, I can't, I have to, I'm not the person. And they'll ask some other identity of the law. See, it's a method that uses the identity of laws and identity of volume. This should use the branch of government grouped the same way it uses the branch of government of other countries individually grouped and together. Grouped, how colonization grouped was used remotely. This is one of the things that is discernible through the suits and ties and counters to it. And this is also to see this simultaneously. You have to understand what's said just right up at the beginning of the Old Testament. It says, only you have to understand is right to hear. And the beginning of the Quran says, all you have to understand is all right up to here. But see, the only people will only interpret religious books from the other part. Because it's a certain type of victim / hyper victim. Everyone speaking through others is being and having been employed per a method that knew they could get individuals to leave out details, make them up as just pretending to know strangers, pretending to have been investigating them privately, mixed with formally, and uses of the difference too. And this is also relevant to differentially criminally foreign influence. So witch trials, even if they were made up, they're about where and how they interbranch with Jim Crow laws. We know we're not made up. With slavery, we know was not made up. These were entrenched roles, north and south, sickly distinctly. We know that was not made up. We know in our faces, other is blamed. And they measure how we don't know. Because they have already measured and maintained. We're reception of evidence, with truths, like, for example, if someone's not right with their statements, they'll say one of the reasons could be because they're not aware of something in the news. So that truth is used to get away with. We won't have to know about things to know the truth of. For example, O'Brien family involved first roles with wire crime methods and names with it. So, but this is through other people as victims. But how they make victim predators is increasingly how they use the corners of the streets too as roles. And then others complete it for them. Now, these are strangers that go out of the way to make fake exceptions so they can say, oh, this is him, but they'll never make that exception clear because it was already roles with all kinds of cases, convictions of people, all kinds of abuses of them, of each age of fact should be nature simultaneously for use of locations. You think the VA is free? I mean, you think that in other words, it is bad things that you have police forms that are involved with psychiatry, psychology, intercampuses of each age and nature through time. People associated with Rock Hill campuses. You have to Weathersfield campuses, West Hartford campuses. One of the things that the news media recorded, confessed, demonstrated conscious, they know to an extent is the least plausible and exploited. It's not as clear and cut. Interbranch investigations, people supposed to defend everyone. Play, exceptions to that. Fire departments, EMS, hospitals. Then they blame other things. In other words, this starts when in other words, there's a Ray Reynolds, another one. Only time I ever had 1 year when I was in kindergarten. Now I went to first grade. In other words, involved with people putting fake things in databases of little kids and with names next to the schools. And other ways they're victims at the same time. But if you try to do it like that, everyone's victim of it because they need to pretend things. Because the only way I know these things and these people are through their roles were increasingly recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed with criminally foreign influence uses of databases. Conjunctive as answers as to questions. How people could pretend they don't realize is worse than unsafe. And how the interbranch has roles. How they could have how could they be motivated to roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, killers, insidiousness of people's opinions and logic A through Z. No, after having come through this. In other words, they blame our founders in our face through our own, who measure and maintain for their own reasons. Either they sense and we don't realize, or they hurt us for showing consciousness, which is we have means from the youngest ages to use. Simultaneously, how sickly distinctly everyone's identity was used and is used as roles with that logic as dictated by the breaching method, not by accident relative to how Democrats and to how Republicans fight with each other and pretend to be against dictators. Because their bases come through campuses. The intercities are already been used criminally foreign influence for what they didn't, who has the most money. Our founders left us to demonstrate that's having been led both by criminally foreign influence roles. We're in space, self-value. Species going extinct, self-value. That's its identity of relationship to Earth's a special difference. Why should Earth have? Only humanity is the one criminally foreign influence against ourselves, out of our minds. We have modern equipment to build things, and now we want to get rid of it and go electric while we're still in the trap that was used against our founders and against Native Americans sickly distinctly. She's that way to fight as a Native American against a Native American syntactically. Who could best overcome? And answer the questions of what to do, where that breaching method was being sustained upon them, where how the means to do, where retreats were being forced. that that breaching method is proof is hyper evidential proofs of Native Americans education having been tactically that have been separated from it consciously tactically. Other had been propagated through a whole bunch of other consciously arrays of other additional to the breaching methods motivations to keep itself then and now not discerned. So not one has learned. That's relevant to how people could stay motivated to pretend you don't realize. The same spots, same people involved with wire crimes now with the interbranch as the ones with the whole bunch of other countries. Use of locations. In other words, forgiveness is so we could deal with what's true always, not denying the slave's exceptions. So the Connecticut interbranch had to switch names. They used the locations then to stack fake things to cover up what they did. Where and how, in other words, there are ways to criminally say, "Oh, let the courts settle this," or to use force against someone who's trying to, you know, and to lie about sequences and background, the intelligence community. When I used violence verbally, when I forced people to call the police, telling them I would go nuts verbally, very aggressively, until they did, without telling them why, because I already caught them before that, to preventing me and others into branch through with the foreign through time, and not just with the foreign. This breaching method knew that our countries would have to counter things like criminal foreign influences, and it knew that they would do it wrong, blaming individuals and blaming and valuing how the groups are now tactically ulterior from how we are individually grouped and together species body of volume slash S. Where one in volume, the hyper simultaneous is making more of itself as what already came, as that identity of volume that already came that we cannot be, but to the extent we are now, and as the extent that we can be, we cannot be, but to an extent where the future is here, value here now, not through this system though, because this system that it is hyper additionally as that identity. In other words, as the identity that logic knows if it's honest. New York City was. In other words, there were men who were and women who were certain type of victim slash hyper victim that pretended to speak for integrity with integrity, and that was used to screen a worse than torture slash slavery method. How could something be worse? No, while it is being denied in their faces, in our faces, distinctly, we are not just Americans that have not justice. Not we could like that we could make it. We could ease the problems. We know what they would be and what they are, and people don't fathom it. People don't think about it because of the extent of use slash s. Everyone will say, "Oh, well, that's not me. I can't do anything about that." Connecticut interbranch switched names. Their motivations for it in the background are involved with people at Food Bag, for example, in Weathersfield. I don't know them with the intelligence community. And with the building, there's a package store near there. I don't know them. They have roles with the intelligence community at Central Connecticut State University and people with a whole bunch of different countries Korea, Afghanistan, Italy. I don't know if that's China, but there's a Mike Pandolf, and there's a Spada family, and there's a Della Fair family, and there are that made confessions and demonstrations with others timed about that as their roles with uses of corners of streets I mean, they don't even know about. But by the breaching method set this up for this, with it relative to motivations for people to forge and switch names and roles with their worst patients and criminals and against innocent people, and how they have the whole array, even their worst patients and criminals, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts. Roles were used to the same locations, even if that was made up, because you know they have also Omni Place. People associated with the it's not where it used to be, but the guy brought up the Omni and the Pito Cordona, and I fought Paul Spadafora in my 10th fight. It was I was boxing for about a year. I'd been in the ring when I was a little kid. Like one time when I was like, you know, under five, so it doesn't count. You know, like one time when I was 16, and that's involved also too with the intelligence community used remotely. They make fake exceptions, and and these are people involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, but also with police forms that they have with where and how employed, the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, natures at all locations, areas, and states. Just as this is why and how the suburbs in Russia and Ukraine look just like they do in America. And in China, it's just about it's like the same scale. And the cities, we're in the same trap that was forced. This is an identity of relationship to itself that nature has, Earth, additionally from us being additional to it, because all and we have a grouped identity, we are together, one identity. So we could show what's keeping everything only increasing. Even anything we could make up has the value of that which is really discernibly. In other words, New York City is not free distinctly from the rest of America. And to get free, we have to get from the politics, especially the politics that are pretended politics, because they are certainly the type of pretend that all those different natures of criminal insidiousness, including the interbranch, had to tell themselves and in each age of their family member, and or they had to be the ones most overtly slash insidiously attaching people and valuing having been attached to people. Fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people. And those things the significance of that stacked database and uses of at timed locations, where and how that which is actually communicated by the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, the military, the service people. His breaching method knew that we have to treasure people who would just sacrifice their bodies and minds for others' logic and or for themselves to force that logic to prevent, as collusions preventing and having prevented mandated law, which would have allowed us to at least admit worse than the torture method upon the people of New York City. All we have to do is admit it, and then with the honesty, with the identity of its relationship to itself, our volume is that we like that. Then we set things up, and then there's no politics. The presidents can actually be chiefs and write executive orders, and they're not going to be they're not going to be playing that game where till never has been addressed. Our founders told us to address how the colonies grouped were used remotely, and you were using all those remotely through the left forced left entrenched and roles with left entrenched value systems criminally foreign influence. Tactically delusions rock. Maxine's taught. Well, in other words, there are proofs that boxing, martial arts, and wrestling is more probable that they had been revealed in ancient times as a place to force accurate quality of fact keeping nature because of where and how exploited consciously self value using and having used the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie, using and having used the right to pretend they could discern. Even if you got a little kid lying, you've been telling them to lie. This is important where and how young they demonstrate, confess, record, confirm consciousness. They interbranch with there's also differentially with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time. That's the only reason why we left that out. Was the victim slash hyper victim. But if we speak about them like that, they pretend they don't understand what we say. So we're not using any real substance yet. We're not using any names properly, instances properly. So I don't even know their names, but there's a kids, they're all people from a whole bunch of different countries and from the territory of Puerto Rico involved with a Pandolf family and a Dove Fair family and a Spotted family with judges involved with the names on my street, involved in the backgrounds with the narratives of Weathersfield police forging and switching names. And so they've had private, they have roles of private cases and civil cases and lawyers that change people's words. They plant fake motivations as people involved with perpetrators of crimes, victims of crimes, and the sources of the people and uses of their narratives tied to it, and the news media locations, and the and people, kids with their teachers and stuff like that in background, using that to lock people. You know, you just repeat what others say or say nothing to other people. They just make people freeze. Also, where and how there are so many bodies connected through time and then timed uses of it that can be shown. In other words, shown. There was a Faenza family. I do not know. They sought me out to make a whole bunch of confessions and demonstrations all at once, involved with their the only other two times I saw them were trying to make fake churches out there near the state judicial branch offices. And they're one of the victims of the World Trade Center attack. That there are various ways because I followed the rules. I recorded a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, on and off Fox Connecticut News, on and off WFSB, on and off NBC in the locations, roles of wire crimes, mail crimes, replacing what's actually recorded on social media. Uses of exception nature, criminally foreign influence too, tactically delusions raw. Well, as roles with way worse, because these are people involved with KKK theme and black themed military police involved with guns and medicines, crimes with kids and drugs crimes with them also made up. So they mix it up. They put fake ties and fake ties and conversations with kids and their families, and they hurt the other kids that they do communicate with other ways. And when they help them too, they have them roles with them with predicate acts methods, relevant relative here. So they use those predicate acts also as collusions with themselves, taking pictures to make fake exceptions of themselves pretending to know others and where and how they have to pretend their motivations because they have roles with other countries on and off the campuses here and there where they have been a fake identity specifically to have them pretend other and relative to how they get away with this by individually grouped and together. So I don't know them, and they try to make fake exceptions. That's one of the things a whole bunch of people tied to them. Never saw him on my street in my life. Mike Pandolf. His brothers, I don't know them. They're one of the ones involved with the intelligence community on off Trinity College and CCSU involved with a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and the co-defendants of his and their family members and their lawyer, Robert Chevery. Robert is the lawyer of Robert Luskin and Robert, and I mean, and his co-defendant in a 2006 district court case with Thaddeus Grabowski, who's one of the ones on Fox Connecticut News, involved with some Mendez police and Dominic Lapriata and John LeConche on Fox Connecticut News in the church there and buildings next to there with a whole bunch of investigators used for identity theft, fraud, slander, rules. One time, I was near my Rick CM Faglione for like a moment when I was in ninth grade. I don't know how he knew I was going. We didn't make plans to go there and stuff like that. I just someone would just tell me to go there because they were making it look like they were having people take pictures. Now these are people involved with people with a principal who was reported, confessed, and convicted of putting upskirt pictures. Now even if that was made up, even though they put that in the news, he was convicted of making upskirt pictures. Now I found people involved with the campus with that and with other natures of the pictures used. And these are people on and off the state judicial branch through time. Involved also with the body dumping spot of Billy Grasso and the spots next to it with the Fianza family and a whole bunch of people connected to the state judicial branch offices that have roles with a whole bunch of other different natures of federal crime, like predicate acts methods, and roles with families that run prisons of little kids and of adults that have been stacking falsified police reports at off-campuses locations with perpetrators, victims, and their sources, and the people associated with their databases. Could be foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, and their natures and motivations narratives. In the way, apart from needing to discern what's there, though, that is bigger than and more finite, as the breaching method, also in the way of not just the species, greater than and more finite, than these uses of our names a lot. Fake branches, bow. So conspiracy theory, a whole bunch of people tied to the databases at Central Connecticut State University and at campuses in Glastonbury and in Wethersfield and in Hartford and New Britain. They have roles intercampuses, even with private and public schools, with uses of names where there's uses of people. That's where they keep collusions with the overt criminal enterprises and private ones. Is where they're making uses of lie, the right to lie, to use a phrase reportedly by James Comey, FBI director, where they don't have the right to lie. Now these are people involved with other agencies and their family members also with uses of, like for example, this is relative to where and how their identity of volume is being haven't been exploited. They've been exploiting it at other locations, like cafeterias, where they'll make a fake exception of someone known to get. So then, if they try to go back, pretend they know. There is a Mike Roberts, and there's a kid. I don't know his name, and so that's why I have to call him Black. That's one of the reasons. They're also involved with with federal evidences crimes and with sequence shifts and with KKK themed and black themed criminally foreign influence uses of databases and of sequence shifts and uses of violence and identity thefts and frauds and slanders and fake sites and with the uses of the array and per their roles with wire crimes that have a Spotter family has a with campuses next to As people brought up by Ray Colo, who asked me a whole bunch of times, I don't know which one he was talking about, because there's a bunch of sisters and this is and brother. I never met the brother, and people involved with spots in Newington, like on off Dearborn Street in Newington, are people involved with leading up to the World Trade Center attack. In that context and sense, they were already used criminally for an influence increasingly. Jared Jensen said that Sal Civiello and his family recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I'm trying to make a fake exception of me pretending I know him. That when I was in fourth grade, where they made a fake exception, they pointed out when I was coming in the classroom from the lavatory, wherever I came into the classroom, and they showed me that they said Sal has a Care Bear, and I was like, I didn't make him feel bad or anything. I didn't, I just went about my business. You know what I mean? That was in fourth grade. I don't know him. One time, the only other exception, one time I went to a Cub Scout meeting, and it was him. It was just him and a Richard Dabrowski, and the mother. I didn't see her at all. Never had communications with her, and then I never came back. And they had been like influenced to make it, so I wouldn't come back. And then he made one exception, called me on the phone, a Richard Dabrowski, which is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He has roles with mayors and with the intelligence community, exception nature, people with the foreign and domestic military, on off Two Rod Highway, and where it runs into Hangdog Lane. Also there's a whole bunch of confessions tied to that by people involved with predicate accident databases at the campus I went to that are connected. But to discern them, you have to follow mandated law, because one of the things they do is force the campus's names to bring up conversations and or to respond to things timed where they're doing it as tricks to make it look like one of the kids said things before. One of the things they're doing is recording, confess, demonstrate, confirm that the overt criminal enterprises and private ones, other kinds of natures of insidiousness and the interbranch can't afford to discern what a little kid could discern. And they measure and maintain who's going to, and sense who's going to approach that. And they're going to do it with humor and stuff like that. And so they're going to be, then they're going to meet criminal insidiousness, where how truths are used for lies. They're measuring and maintaining your kids, as they did to yourself. A truth, in other words, they're putting you relative to the other kids. They're putting excuses for the people who are teaching what they were taught to teach. Also relevant where a whole bunch of juxtaposed, separate, and together, also additional from the breaching method, motivations at those interbranch locations, and their conjunctions. See, Central Connecticut State University has roles and had roles with campuses, names at campuses I went to in Wethersfield since I was a kid. And they have roles with names next to campuses that say and pretend things. They make fake Facebook pages, fake YouTube pages, fake Twitter pages, and they make real ones. As the police forms, using the Wethersfield Police Department to attach as roles with attaching self-value, with attaching many ways self-value, attaching little kids and their families to fake conversations with themselves, fake ties to themselves and to others, fake natures of ties to themselves and to others. As their roles of wire crimes was like a Tim O'Brien who called the police when I was a little kid about something he heard about someone calling the police, 911. And in other words, Their roles with the intelligence community from Hartford and police forms with the various natures of police departments and the military police forms serves a worse than criminally incompetent, lack of security manifest. And proofs of it is the suburbs, how they were didactically denatured, the forced reliance upon mass farming. For example, manifesting as Ukraine's role with the world's interest were how they could get away with pretending to speak for identity of the law, those issues, where how all means have stayed only capable of self-valuing the suburbs tactically denatured, let alone the cities. So we have police forms and we have courts associated with them. They have roles with drugs crimes and drugs crime methods, medicines crimes methods, and extent of conscious exploitation of where things like subject matters like crimes or drugs have been grouped. So they have an array of all these things that no one would ever try or want to, or like even, and they're getting killed by them the first time they do. Reportedly. But also the news has roles with the worst patients and criminals before they got caught, and against totally innocent people, and with a whole bunch of people tied to Hartford Hospital that are tied to UConn, Trinity College, and see Central Connecticut State University with the FBI in its defending capacity. I'm coming. Don't have to be a lawyer. They have wire crime action methods, self-valued roles with police forms. Trantolo knows. They should follow mandated law. Get them out the paper, the interbranch that forged and switched names, that made the stacked police reports intercities that have roles with this since I was a kid. Same names, intercities, on and off the campuses. And see that Justin Klevinskis, the one from Germany, who said who apparently married a girl that went to my grammar school. I never had anything to do with her. I never saw her around the grammar school or anything. That Lucinda. These are people in his neighbors. The Fred Grisette. These are people involved with this police chiefs in Toronto, also with the networks, and with New York City. Has roles with psychiatry, psychology, all kinds of drugs and medicines, racketeering, and then uses of that as crime methods, where they have courts involved with it, where they have logic that is recorded as our evidence. But the hyper evidential has to be used. But that's why we have to counter them at locations. They've been replacing what we say online to fit with their fake things and backgrounds. All exception nature and demonstration is the same thing. And the delay of it, they know to an extent was already used. See, everyone's differentially criminally foreign influence, but increasingly, and that self-value having been exploited, or they attach that person to changed words, fake words. So our countries use phrases like conspiracy theory and words like theory. So the breaching method measures and maintains. They can't counter as a fact human nature properly. What causes things like the problems with the coronavirus. The incompetence of the sciences because of criminal foreign influence uses of them individually grouped in together for what has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the use of locations. But then it makes exceptions. It's already made the exceptions relied upon by the only increasing other identities and natures of logic. Only capable of being if we study these systems as an identity tactically ulterior from its own, that is also positive unto itself. where now also it is positive onto it's a special difference. It's a special difference makes all that is variable hyper constant, better than just constant. And that makes what it is as already constant increasingly valuable as itself, as all things. Vaccines. I teach us things belong. So people that have roles that running the prisons, they have a whole bunch of names that know my name that I never had classes with in my school and other people's schools. And they do the same. It has something to do with people that were in my middle school that didn't have classes with, and ones that were in my middle school class with a teacher named Mr. Wall. Also put there to make as one of the whole bunch of ways to make people not talk about it, because they have roles with various natures of courts, and probably people with the intelligence community all along roads and routes where they are being haven't been used by that breaching method that designed the suburbs before our founders were born. Our founders who asked us to communicate about how they had to counter extort the founders, the ones that had to leave with slavery entrenched north and south. But others were told. Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have self-valued roles with how I lost even if it was my fault, how I lost my history book regarding James Madison and regarding their uses of anything with all campuses, not just them, certain type of victim / hyper victim. So there are people involved with this, with the intelligence community, where they stack names and they have criminally foreign influence readings of statutes. So I have to get the link to the video before I go further into that. But it's people all along Route 3 with the countries involved with the news. Ukraine, Russia, America. For example, they have roles with psychiatry, psychology, doctors who are also police forms, military. They can't defend themselves what they did against humanity, against their own people, under the name of pretending to be the only ones to defend them. That's why there's no defense. That's why the narrative is fake on all sides. In other words, right there, you could make how you could do it. You could stop war instantly by just being by letting one identity speak. Speak religion. Why do you think we're supposed to contemplate what the Father is being about? The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. The debate between the Holy Spirit and the Holy Ghost, the Trinity, is manifest all kinds of ways. Like, for example, its identity, the extent of its identity of volume, that we could discern that is true all ways. As that which is actually hyper simultaneous. Another proof that we need to discern the hyper simultaneous is because not only as our species, individual grouped in together, as a volume, where volume is value as nature / nature as value, and the opposite sequence / simultaneous nature. This is true, hyper conversely at the same time. I just remind vaccines. It teaches things if let. Let's not forget. So Connecticut boxing gyms recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They've been influenced by the intelligence community and by exception nature tied to them. Some ways that were constantly other ways where and as the intelligence community that was there's some ways themselves legitimate, some ways themselves criminally foreign influence. But there's also where and how simultaneously overt criminal enterprises and private ones were influencing people the same way. And through as their roles together with the exception nature, like the people that run the prisons, people that run the military, also roles with on off the state judicial branch offices, all along that route that goes by there. In other words, involved with names, involved with where they brought them up. There's a Bob Chase and people tied to him who brought up the name. Bob Chase only brought up the name Phil Cololo. He's one of the ones involved with various natures of courts with him with child offenders, people on the child abuse registry before they got caught. He was forcing them by his roles with Whiting's forensics place and with state police families and with FBI families and with foreign and domestic military families, foreign and domestic Navy, for example. But more than that. So, in other words, Eric Jensen, has something. I never had anything to do with Eric Jensen to Route Highway. Trying to make one fake exception real fast with and that's the kid from fourth grade. And then my fifth grade teacher that involved him with that. And that's after when I was in third grade, there was some instance with a Debbie Gold who stacked, an illusion with her father. That might have been second grade. No, I think it was the third grade. I believe it was the first year they had. It might have been the first year they had Earth Day. But they lie about what came before that as an identity theft, fraud, slander method, where they measure and maintain, where they're putting fake motivations too with other people that was also a collusion with O'Brien brothers and family. And I found out their extended family as ones from Weathersfield campuses through time involved also with Sandy Hook campuses and courts. They're also pretending where they don't have the right to pretend they have legitimacy and pretending they don't realize it's plausible that out here they have roles fabricating audio and video with the FBI and with other agencies, with NBC, Connecticut News, Fox Connecticut News, WFSB, names next to them, people involved with other local like New Britain Herald. In other words, next locations next to it, paved along routes next to the routes, next to CCSU. There is maintenance to the uses of the identity of volume at the locations of every place. Used criminally foreign influence, used remotely. And so we're going to address this because we're not going to accept the course of black people's whites of eyes denied and the abridgments nor the abridgments of it denied. We will unite this way. Species bodies one. Vaccine is fun. The species body all partakes. Some pays, some rest. Some only pay, some rest. Shout out boxing. This way alone hurts not one is bad. So there's that nature of positive where people can fight with each other. And if they can make the better outcome, in other words, we have to finish that. In other words, the Native Americans were right. They had to react and do it the best they could. And they had to fight about why the reaction was wrong that way, because that was forced. How we know that? Because first of all, they're separated. In other words, there is no way to do it. So they made the phenomenon of a way for us to get it done, to get it done. Because in other words, but we're not letting it done because we're not. Excuse me, we're leaving out the interbranch roles collusions. Even if it was made up, it's still collusions. Uses of the world of the witch trials place and the one right next to the Webb House. Webb House has roles also with names. They use mind criminally foreign influence at corners of buildings. And fake exceptions pretending to know me with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, various natures of federal criminals, and former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members and neighbors. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. People with Trinity College with them involved along Ridge Road and along Two-Route Highway. Influence to roles, criminally foreign influence with a whole bunch of different countries. Identity theft, fraud, slanders, and uses of them. People with the state police associated with the Jensen family on the Brown Turnpike. Also rolls all along Route 3. And it was no, it's conjunction to Hangdog Lane, where it's conjunction to Two-Route Highway. Their motivations and narratives in the background, they know, are tied to how I only know them saying things about me and bringing up each other's names behind each other's backs to make it look like I knew them like a group. As their roles timed with also with all kinds of medical corruption with the databases, and their roles with their conversations with teachers in the background, where they're planting fake things for the intelligence community in the background. That's what's recorded various ways. Not, in other words, so I still haven't been responded by the various campuses. Increasingly, the Whiting Forensics has more people involved. There's a guy who brought up the middle school. I don't know, a woman brought. I don't know. Didn't make it clear, but there are some judges and people involved with the Whiting Forensics that has houses next to middle schools, involved with them with identity thefts and frauds, fake ties to me, fake nature ties to me. A police chief, Centron, is involved with Reno Mazzucato. Pretended to know me at the web. I made a fake exception at the Webb House. One time they made a fake exception at old near the beach. It was real fast. In other words, they're planting fake things, and they're putting truths used for lies too with the intelligence community as their roles criminally. Soundview, people involved with Soundview, involved with names next to campuses, involved with identity theft, fraud, slander, putting fake things in databases, and tying and speaking and acting illusions, having them filmed for themselves. Everyone attaching people to fake words. This is there is maintenance to everyone blaming other things, others themselves, for those things. Our founders asked us to blame, and that thing singular as the breaching method. So Hartford Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they pretend that they had conversations with people about religions, so they could pretend they make unreasonable thoughts about religion, and so they force drugs into them. This is one of the people. This is one of the reasons. Even famous actors, sometimes they go in there and then you hear the news report, oh, they had problems with drugs. They're attaching people to fake uses of drugs. I never had anything to do with all these drugs. I never had never. And they're pretending other. And then you know the words. They make fake exceptions. They use that exception where they have marijuana. Too, they use that to keep the kids' fake locations, fake ties to each other. In other words. So, I don't have anything to do, and I never had anything to do with Rich Dombrowski in South Sevilla. The people that are involved with the wire crimes of the Weathersfield police now, forging and switching names. They have roles with poisons and stuff along those roads, along Wells Ridge Road. And with there are people that are associated with houses around and people associated with Paul Kelly and his family and religious locations involved with UConn and with the FBI, with overt criminal enterprises and the intelligence community with names associated with locations next to the campuses through time, next to Trinity College, next to the child campuses there, next to ones on Franklin Avenue, next to ones on all the campuses, sickly distinctly too, private and public too. Watkinson has people involved with the intelligence community leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. I'm sure they don't know about it, but they know to an extent. Their Facebook and the reactions to things. You know, it's not legitimately law, but for how the law demonstrates to call it the law. They have not been reporting things. They have been using the time treatments as collusions with measured, maintained uses of forced abuses of each age of boys and girls, sickly, distinctly, consciously. So the governors have roles with East Hartford locations. I don't understand it, but Governor Malloy was recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. One of the ones they influenced the roles. Please answer Governor Malloy for them with the principal child abusers campus. There was more then and now I caught. They gave you faked audio and video, the FBI and other people involved with the co-defendants of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, also involved with that campus and other campuses with people that plan time fake. Like I never knew Mark Violet. And Mike Violet, the only time I was Mike Violet one time in Rocky Hill, we had no communications though. That kid handed me the black bag. I gave money to Mark Violet. He gave me a bag of marijuana. I don't know that person. He had time rolls on off the state capitol through time. They said his name was Joe. And he's involved with a Mike Violet. People on the street of a Mike Violet is associated with a restoration company, also involved in the intelligence community with the Joshua Julian and other people associated with the principal child offender, involved with the Whiting forensics that also brought up the name Christine and they didn't tell me the last name. And there are people involved all along Route 3 with multiple Christines that they involved with the names like Cololo, that the Weathersfield police called me on the name they used on the phone. They used the name Cololo. I don't know which Cololo they're referring to. I still haven't gotten a response for the confessions of the Bob Chase and the demonstrations of the Bob Chase. These are people that have been a long time involved with criminally foreign influence uses of databases and narratives in the mouths of people like Joshua Julian, recorded involved with federal crimes with evidences on the Facebook page of a principal child abuser, involved with others with more pictures of the kids and uses of the victims' kid. Some of the victims are some of the people, the responders' families, because they're hiding roles with uses of locations already for predicate acts of other methods and natures, like wire crimes, acts and methods. So Eric Oliveri and Joshua Stryker have the intelligence community reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I never saw a Joshua Stryker anywhere near my uh, house, but he was repeated by others involved with people at the corner of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive, and with the police forms that keep making confessions and with courts tied to the corners of that street through time and demonstrations to me of their roles with the people at predicate acts behind my back and fake exceptions. I don't know them. Like, in other words, then they do like the sequence shifts. Well, then the person will make it look like he's the one. In other words, there's a Joshua Stryker who's one of the ones involved on and off campuses. A whole bunch of people with the intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with influencing criminally foreign influence uses of the Facebook page of Trinity College by people associated with Dean Alford, switching his name for him probably because it was time, and them demonstrably tied to his roles with Joshua Stryker and other people involved with other countries. I don't know their names. That know mine. And they're involved with pretending passions and emotions and motivation, even when they're correct, they're hiding what came before that. As people involved with untimely deaths on and off my street that would confess as strangers that had to make all these confessions to pretend to know me, to lock me into their roles with the group. I don't even know these kids if they went to the same campuses as me. I don't even know if they went private public, even though they're the same ages as me. I know that they have the shopping center involved with the intelligence community and with a whole bunch of people with foreign countries and the police firms that can just walk right through the businesses and stuff that have roles with that criminally foreign influence uses of that. And the military roles with that. So you need to get on paper with those people at the corner businesses. There's a Kerr family. I don't know if this is there's more than one Jerry Kerr, but there are more. But that's also the people involved with the Church Street, corner of Church Street and Main Street in Old Weathersfield. Whole bunch of people names tied to there, involved with the Kerr family with the name Cololo. Also with the Weathersfield police who wire crimes through time with them, with their attaching little kids to fake conversations with adults and with police, fake ties and natures and ties to, 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 to strangers, complete strangers, even with police. I never had a conversation with police when I was a kid. Same ones were involved with police attaching everyone around me to fake conversations, fake ties with themselves and others, and with their sources. Whole bunch of people tied to Joshua Schumack, also with Weathersfield Police, involved with mayors and people on and off the three spots at the end of the Burlington Turnpike with the intelligence community, all along Route One. That route from Weathersfield Wells Road all the way through Newington, all the way to Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, Connecticut. Now, on and off all sides of it are people involved with the intelligence community and with courts and police forms and the exceptions tied to them, like people run prisons, things like that. People who work with their databases, people who deliver them food, the timing of everything. They have roles with foreign and domestic military waiting forensics, also with the narratives of Joshua Julian, who brought up old things that the news brought up about organized crime reporting they did. And they have roles with various natures of federal criminals before they got caught that were pretending to be against things that they were doing. They were using, in our uses of election laws, where they use the right to lie about the opponents, criminally foreign influence, uses of that, where they don't have the right to lie, they're using it. They're using those illusions where they employed them as roles, same thing, so they can, where they lock the intelligence community. They have some girl, I don't know her name, she had a conversation with my principal about me, about the Rodney King attack. And she wasn't even in my grade, apparently. And over there, anyway, she also, as one of the ones involved with the Joshua Stryker, involved with various natures of fellow criminals, involved with wire crimes and abuses of the girls that involved their roles timed with overt criminal enterprises with middle school kids, spreading lies and rumors with the courts and the overt criminal enterprises, even if they're undercover with them, as federal evidence is crimes roles, planting fake. I don't know the people on Bolter. They try to make a fake exception That's with a Kerr family. There are also people on that street associated with that, with conversations with them, with the as the intelligence community with their cap criminally foreign influence. I don't know the people with the I don't even know their names. Um, I never had a class with her. I never saw her around school. I never saw those people, and it has something to do with one of the people who went to a school with my father, and one of the other people was involved with the putting fake things in databases through time between public and private and religious campuses, from off campuses, police forms, roles with this. Criminally foreign influence uses of the military, interbranch family members. So they have to follow mandated law. They have that corner of that street also involved with it, all sides of it through time. So there's also a Ray Clow on YouTube who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed uses of the word maturity, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, and that's relevant as their roles with people on the child abuse registry, and further involved with timed uses of elderly for homes, as their roles with the Weathersfield police with wire crimes, forging and switching names, crime methods where they use sending people to people's houses so they can fucking excuse me put all kinds of crime methods by that. This is mixed with them forging and switching names. They have Rocky Hill campuses that have names involved with that. And with the World Trade Center, they attach me and my, they attach my people I know from Saudi Arabia to fake ties, fake natures of ties to themselves as people from my town through time. I kept getting confessions that were demonstrating that to me as the people involved with predicate acts with databases that were they're affected by others. You want to self value roles with that. We want to fight about with someone. We want to debate with someone. Let's get to what we're debating about. You put fake audio and video to replace with the confessions and the communications and the nature of communications I have with the principal child abuser that you guys forced with other natures as roles with women interbranch with it. We're not going to leave that out. No one spoke for. Why are you going to speak for women? You don't speak for how the little girls in New York City sickly never had a chance to speak for logic. With the course of black pupils, whites of eyes, real says. Now get them on paper. Who disbelieves? Right there. Anyone wants to care for what I say, wants to support me, right? Who disbelieves? Get them to one name and sequence, please. That's what it means. Who disbelieves? That's our theme. That's our theme. Get them to one name and sequence, please. Because they switch names in sequence. And you're going to see that they're doing and have done way worse. I'm going to ask you guys for forgiveness, just like we want forgiveness for them. People that go to the course. The jury selection process rolls with that criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. There's a guy named Zeman involved with that. Before we get to that, we have to get to the Alehi family and how they have roles consciously with the intelligence community as parents, but as other times as teachers at other schools, and the difference between that. Like men and women with an O'Neill family. I didn't even know what they look like. One of them they had on a television. I don't remember what she looks like. She's with Weathersfield campuses and Manchester campuses, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by others before her and by herself. But she's pretending others. She does roles with Weathersfield campuses with uses of my name and others where she'd been lying with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people with whiting forensics. Also, she has my Saudi friend on a conversation with her on whiting forensics over the phone, involved also with her roles with predicate acts with WFSB and with Fox Connecticut News and with NBC Connecticut News. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They pretend that the only reason they're only trying to hide that because they know they have roles way worse. And so, but we have to get those other names. So we have to get me from the fake conversations with them They've been planting evidences on the campuses also physically, not just digital crimes. And they have roles with the names at the departments of the campuses through time, at the locations next to them. Even the family members of the police forms on and off Central Connecticut State University through time involved with connected predicate acts and roles with their names and uses of those confessions and demonstrations at other locations, like in Cromwell. I never had anything to do with Cromwell. Cromwell, there's a whole bunch of ties involved with people with identity theft, fraud, slander, roles with off the child defenders campus, spots next to them. Use of my name, criminally foreign info, delusions raw, and fake. You know, even when they're real too, that's annoying too. They use truth for lies. Get them on paper, and get them on. In other words, so with the police chief and his daughter, John Maiano brought up his daughter. John Maiano said other things in people's names with this. You guys brought him into this conversation about my car involved too. They messed with my car too. There are proofs. When I was a sophomore too, so they could make it look like I knew the Ray Clo and the Mark Violet. I never saw Mark Violet around campus ever. Tried to make a fake exception one time, real fast. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed as one of the people involved all along the routes and on off the religious spots. And has relativity to all kinds of stories in the news of all kinds of natures. Like where he lives now, where he used to live, which is conjunctive to that route. That's all along Wells Road. So see people from Central Connecticut State University recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. There's a Kevin Crone and James Kevin Crone. I don't know his brother's name. Mark Crone. And I know their name through others, and they know my name through others. I never had a class with them, never saw them around campus anywhere. When I saw them at a Perone house, a Perone family was involved with the people from Yukon and with the intelligence community involved with their neighbors also, with their coach. Like one of them has a football coach, and people involved with the Jonathan Mile, who everyone speaks with others tell them, and they've been using that criminally for info. Also, they touch everyone with fake words. In other words, fake conversations that never were. And roles with sequence shifts. As people through time evolved with writing forensics, with narratives and names involved with that which Joshua Julian was one of the ones involved used his Facebook before. Conscious uses of types of respondents to types of abuses of pictures of kids used to force the worst uses of such as roles. They even with their own kids' pictures used, if real or not. A whole bunch of people in the Leahy family have their kids involved on and off the private schools and public schools, and the ones associated with their kids and their friends, planting predicate acts, planting federal rules of evidence as crimes, roles of criminally foreign influence, uses of differences like black and white by formal identities, consciously where and how that gets in the way from people communicating about the breaching method that they have roles with that way while they're pretending other. That consciously prevents people from demonstrating how a bunch of fakes speaking about passions and emotions are doing so to leave out what's simultaneously actually recorded and discernible. So we have to get to the hyper evidential. We should. I want to make this hyper journalism half owned by Native American. at least to the extent that they claim they're free and not exploiting any exceptions. Then we could know if we're not all free yet too. But there, no, we're every Native American is free, and we'll know how to do this because we know each of our country's name was used politicized. Each of our country's names uses words like theories, criminally foreign influence. Experts on health, if they don't have the capacity to discern how uses of the rights to force people to use drugs and the means to get over on how the laws to prevent such. In other words, they're entertaining such. How they can prevent such? They've been putting. Then they have to lie about why the people are mad about them. So they value having just fake conversations with people. They're pretending people have uses of drugs as a means to pretend they thought they were in locations they were that they never were, and pretending they use drugs. They're just putting fake things because that's one of the ways they control uses of the sense and sensibilities of people at locations, where how they are being and haven't been used remotely criminally foreign influence, including the leaders of every country. They are forced to self-value roles with that logic. That has entertained what cannot entertain itself and afford defenses of the people of New York City and of the rest of America, sickly distinctly victims slash hyper victims. The breaching method is the hyper victimhood through all the other roles and natures it generates and generated unequally too, no. And that's increasingly relative. So, Arixian Faglione pretended to know me near the state capitol with some courts and prosecutors and people with the medical community. Also with a Chuck Casper, who also I never had a class with in grammar school, as people involved together with a former Mayor Gold's family through time, and people associated with them like a Joe Aiello, also involved with intercultural and culturally themed identity theft frauds, abuses of children, criminally foreign influence uses of the military, medical locations, campuses, people's names, fake ties to people on campuses with the FBI, people with the FBI, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants. There's a John LeConte, there's a Don LeConte involved with people on Church Street in Old Weathersfield through time. All through time, intercampuses rolls with predicate acts with those names tied to them. I don't even know them, so it's not personal. These are people involved with John DeMorrow, too. I only know him as a stranger who sought me out with all these confessions. In other words, through tied to the same spots, like Town Line Drive has roles with foreign and domestic, a whole bunch of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and uses of that on our campuses where they plant evidences and make people ask questions, and then they don't hear the answers, and they run away. They don't even know the people's names, too. In other words, they have roles with a kid who they say shot another kid. Now that's probably proved tied to people. There are people with a Brian Bonin, a Mike Roberts, people tied to this Kerr family, people tied to a Brian family told me that they involved the Nielsen family, and others from Central Connecticut State University said that. I never said that, Robert. I never had a conversation about with Al Nielsen in my life or his family. I don't know them. I knew them at a farm. They were nice people. Wanted that to be clear. Central Connecticut State University has roles with the agencies and with the intelligence community that used to live near me. There are people with the name De Simone, also with Newington locations, and roles in Newington locations involved with the name Cologne, with the Wethersfield Police with wire crimes, switching and forging names, and roles of male and female police officers, sickly distinctly with the child offenders, and the people on the child abuse registry involved with the Wethersfield families that answer the phones for them and that fabricate police reports with them through time. Also, how they have collusions between the perpetrators of crimes, the victims, and the sources of them, and the interbranch is recorded, and that's relevant. And these are the people involved consciously, sickly, distinctly intercity, as a minority of representatives from these types as employed by the breaching method, tactically ulterior from how nature employed deference to be used, which is to discern its identity, hyper invisible but still discernible. The hyperconjunction. Yeah, I teach you long hyper clear vaccines. I wish I had the microphone. I have to get the microphone going. Actually, thank you. So America, world, hyper negotiations table. All we have to do is admit, okay, we used our identities wrong, and that was used remotely. You know what I'm saying? Or at least it's fathomable. And if who denies it, their logic will have inherent to it, active to it, and increasingly demonstrably attached to it. Demonstrations of the same thing. Vaccine. So it's counter obfuscated. Because I'm trying to give you guys a heads up. If I wanted to hurt you guys, play you guys the game that everyone plays, only shown. Trying to show you. Little Rap Guy and friends are, in other words, everyone, the cartoon value nature systems version of New York City. Everyone's they're charged with cultivating the counter extortion of New York City, of Hartford, and of the neighboring suburbs and nations. And they're involved with the means to do it. That began as what they called the Black Pupils, an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise. But it meant to be an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise, which now the heroine, so some might say, Little Rap Guy, a.k.a. Romulus, the brother of Remus, and Little Rap Guy and Friends. So he's trying to make it now not, he's trying to make it the world be a anti-hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. Because modern countries are archetypal criminal enterprises. But they're haven't been used remotely by a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. They knew that they would blame other things, others, or selves, for the real causes of criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments and identity treatments, time treatments, instances, insidiousness roles, locations, insidiousness roles. Criminal insidiousness, natures of positive treatments and negative treatments and identity treatments have only been heard simultaneously communicated. Self-valued uses, evidences, by the only allowed to be heard voices. Maxine. I teach us things belong. So in other words, all we have to do is have this. They've been charging themselves. The people pretending they're about litigation. They've been charging themselves and even the medical community, pretending things are medical oriented, with doctors using forced mental evaluations, where people, as means to further the over criminal enterprises and private ones. Other natures of bad things, well, crime scenes, criminally foreign influence uses of parks since founding, not just Rosa Parks. That's additional to it. Whether the Constitution's abridged because the grounding is abridged too, and because of how that's exploited at other locations. So we have to address how the people involved with wire crimes and acts methods, how the intelligence they invested themselves. Get them onto paper, please, with the people involved. I'm now who denies anything. Then they pretend we had these long conversations with people over the phone, they know that I caught. Now they're sustaining this between campuses through time and from that campus. So get them onto paper with the CCSU ties and the Trinity ties to the child abusers campus in Wethersfield, and then let's get the other ones involved. Because the people with the whiting forensics recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, they have rolls with more people sick next to the middle school campus and other campuses in town further involved with planting evidences with them, fake ties, fake natures of ties to people. Get them onto paper to one name and sequence. And with this Joshua Julian narrative, with the news, with them, fabricating predicate acts together with the interbranch at the same time, and the exceptions tied to them. Not just the news and people tied to them, even prisons and whiting forensics and their state offices, state judicial branch offices, state prison offices. How that's tied to the town lines, their roles with the town lines, whole bunch of names, roles with the town lines, involved with the names and the roles and the narratives in the background that pretended they had conversations with me, like these Mendez police. Get them on paper now with the rest of the judges and stuff. And the principal child defender's confessions. I want a response for how that was hid by them fabricating emails, also other natures of digital crimes and crime method roles and fronts that the intelligence community and families have with the child defenders on the campuses, religious spots. Get the heck down. I'll gather.